Welcome to the Air Career Mentors. I also welcome Mr. Ritvik Tandon to tell us something about building a strong foundation for effective facilitation. He consults across diverse organizations in many streams like business operations, manufacturing and process, excellence, etc. He is distinguished for rolling out 200 plus improvement projects encompassing metrics related to turnaround times, operational costs, defect reduction in system, and many more. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Isha. So, welcome. This is Ritvik Tandon. Basically, just to make it short, I basically consult with analytics firm, which is Seaport Analytics and Solutions as of now, which is a startup. So, we'll dive straight away into the webinar. Any questions you may have, you can post it on the chat window. So, what we do here is we are actually looking at very basics of how you would probably start and building a strong foundation for effective facilitation. Uh, Let me, we will actually go into what are the various definitions and what all we need to do about it and what are the aspects of a facilitation. We'll jump into a little later, but first let's look at what are the pre-work or the prerequisites for doing so. Why have we chosen this topic is because uh, effective facilitation skills are very important when it comes to managing change and driving change programs. But before we dive into facilitation, we want to get an insight into change management. Let's get that. And what exactly is change management? Because it will give us the right context and the need for facilitation. Now, why I'm saying that is because before you do that actual facilitation, effective change management is one of the primary building blocks for any facilitation or any program as such. If we do not do this, our facilitation process will be on a very shaky ground. Now, with this, let's look at what is change management. Now, why it is necessary is because to tell about change management is because that is the first step in actually before actually start actually the facilitation process, right? So let's take a basic definition of change management. So what is change management? It is a structured approach. Now look at the words which I've highlighted. A structured approach. It is a transition of individuals, teams, organization from a current state to a desired future state to achieve a target operating model or strategy. Now, when I'm saying the future state, what do we mean? Our target operating model or strategy is the future state in a technical terms. And it is not just the technical aspect of it, but it is also the cultural aspect of it, the mindset aspect of it. So change management deals with both of them. All right, let me go forward. Okay, so what are the type of changes one can expect in any organization? It can be a design of totally new process. It can be a technological upgradation in terms of IT or the process technology itself. We may be deciding to go for a totally new process, and the technology itself is a change. Um, it can be an organizational restructuring. I mean, must be adding maybe people, or we may be deciding to go into a different line of work. It can be a business model change, or it can be mergers acquisitions, or it can be as maybe specific like a new marketing campaign also. Now, if I were to give you an example, the especially let's take business model changes. Let's assume that we were a pure manufacturing organization. Basically, we were only responsible for the manufacturing aspect of it, and beyond this, it would be taken over by a central team. Let's say central marketing. So most of the processes, many of the processes which happened outside the organization would not be a part of it. But now what we have decided that to give more focus on in individual organizations, we will now be a SBU. What is SBU? A strategic business unit, which will have profit and loss, which will have logistics, which will have marketing, which will have an extended supply chain. And now, any of these changes, when it happens, it is like a complete change of the business model. And let me also tell you, each one of these changes which I'm talking about, whether it is process design or technical upgrades or organizational restructuring, they are not in isolation. They don't work in silos. So if I'm doing a business model change and I'm going from a manufacturing organization to a strategic business unit, I would also have to do organizational restructuring. I may also do maybe a technological upgrade also. I may be required to do IT upgradation also. That may require process changes. I will have to put up some marketing campaigns also. But the primary change here is the business model, and every other change which is mentioned is basically support. I hope that is clear. I mean, think. Please post in your questions if you have any. So okay, so going to the next one. I'm not sure whether you've got it. Okay, right. Uh, there are some one top quotes. I would be quoting one guru, a change guru called John Cotter, who's author of A Leading Change. So, like John Cotter, so there is you have Philip Kotler, who's the guru for marketing. You have Joseph Juran um, for quality. So similarly, for change management and change management models, you have Mr. John Cotter, who's actually still there, and he is basically also the head of the Cotter International, which he's founded himself. What he says is, in one single line, over 70% of the change programs fail. If I were to give it a little more context and be more specific, 70% of change programs fail in general. If we have taken an average of a lot of data across the world and find that not only 70% but more than 90% fail in the first attempt. So you have to keep iterating. And why is that? We will look at it in the next slide. Okay, before I go into this, I'll tell you he had created, just for the more knowledge of the participants and the attendees, he created a 8-step model of his change model for the purpose of this keeping this webinar short. What it says is step one is basically you have to create a sense of urgency with why you want that there's a change which is needed. So there has to be some sort of urgency has to be coming, which is going to be driven from top down. Create a guiding coalition. Then you need to develop a change vision and strategy. You need to communicate it to the people, and then empower broad-based action. Then step six says that you have to generate short-term wins. Now, this is very, very important in any change program, because what happens is if you keep it too long and you keep a program too long and you do not demonstrate wins, the management never gets convinced. And the best way to drive change is through short wins. Then you have to consolidate gains and implement more change after that, and then anchor change in the culture. So this is the 8-step model which is given, and Peachy says that if you follow this to the letter, or at least in the spirit, you will be able to do drive effective change management program. Yeah, so Uday, we will deal with the anxiety of any change based fear for any change. We talk about that in the later slides, and probably I'll take it as a long discussion actually, which actually talks in very detail about how actually you want to how do you actually do carry about a change. So for that there are some prerequisites. So I'll take that question maybe after the have a look at the complete maybe it'll get answered in the presentation itself. So I've changed the slide. You can just look at it. So why you want to do change management? So we looked at the overall statistics, right? And we saw that, okay, if you look at the statistics at an overall level for all change programs which are there, and look them at a collective level, we'll find that the 35% of the change programs get cancelled, 67% do not realize full potential, 46% not sure how to do the business on ERP or any new maybe platform, 53% are budget overruns, and that budget overrun can be as high as maybe nearly 189, 190%, or nearly 200%, if I were to take a round figure factual estimate. 70% would be total failure of change efforts, and 40% did not achieve business case even after 1 year of go live. Let's say you were supposed to, after implementing the change within next maybe let's say 6 months, you were or 1 year, you were supposed to get some ROI. What happens is that even after 2 years, 3 years, still you don't get that ROI. So then it becomes a question that we spent so much amount of money, where is that returns? Now these statistics are at an overall level for all the change programs and collectively. Now, if we were to look at some statistics and categories for failures for many change programs, we'll go to the next slide. And I want to say one thing here, that these programs and the change programs which I'm mentioning here are at an organizational level. And they can incorporate one single change program can also incorporate many smaller change programs also, right? And it is much bigger than the normal IT change program, though it can itself, an IT organizational change program management in an IT project can also be as one of the change programs. But right now we are talking in a holistic manner. At an individual level, if I were to look at change programs, what we'd get is there are number one, it would be the error which we would be committing is not established enough sense of urgency. Now, these are following directly from these 8 steps which we are talking about. So, just a little bit of diversion. So, if you want to know about the other, how the change models are, those are modules in themselves, and there are methods and methodologies of individual change programs. Quarter itself himself has a big program which is there. So we can take that up in successive modules. Yeah, so good morning, Rajesh, and good morning, Sudhir. Welcome to the program. Second is, we are not creating powerful enough guiding coalition. Guiding coalition means that if you try to do all the programs yourself and you do not work in some coalition with somebody, you will not be able to generate that kind of influence for any change program. And you fail. I mean, you can tend to fail very drastically. Third is basically lacking a vision. I mean, where do you want to go? I mean, where do you see yourself in with this change program in the next 2 years, 3 years? The fourth one is under communicating the vision. Meaning, I have said, let's say in the next maybe 3 years, I want to achieve that kind of, let's say, about double-digit growth for my organization. Or I am saying that I want to completely automate this particular process in the next 4 years. Now I need to communicate it down the line to all the stakeholders. Now, what are stakeholders? We will and how they work. We will discuss it briefly in the coming slides. So, if you do not communicate this vision to anybody, I mean, it will be failure on our part, and then tomorrow the program will have to go back and then communicate it again, which probably is not a good idea. The fifth one is that if there are visions to the change, right? So you need to identify what all the obstacles are there to the vision part of it. Okay, so I want to do this. So what are the gaps? How do I achieve this? And there has to be some very action-oriented steps towards this. Sixth is not systematically planning for and creating short-term wins. Now, this is very, very important. Any program which you have, you need to be able to break it down into smaller aspects where you can actually set in milestones, goals, and demonstrate those visions. Okay, so I'm going to do this implementation. I'm going to do this project. But here, I'm supposed to go from, let's say, X to level Y. But in case I do not able to achieve, but I'm able to do a delta improvement, or I'm able to show a needle improvement, let's say from X to delta X, express delta X, I need to communicate that delta X because this is my achievement, and I need to demonstrate it also, and I need to plan for it. Then once you do that, declaring victory too soon. But at the same time, we cannot go overboard. While we need to demonstrate the win, we have planned for it, but we cannot declare victory. Why demonstration is important is because then people will have start having confidence in whatever you are going to be doing, right? And whatever you are going, you are on the correct path. But if you declare victory too soon, they say that okay, let's look at the final picture first. And there's a tendency of being complacent also. Then the last one is you are not anchoring changes in the corporation's culture. Now, this is very important. You have done a change in a small level, but what you need to do is actually work from top down and bottom up both, uh, and do an horizontal replication, because you want to actually anchor, you want to actually really have a very strong foundation, and they should hold. When you say anchor, it should be sustainable, and it should be coming out in the DNA of the organization. Okay. Uh, so let's go to the next part of change. What are the various aspects of change? I mean, there are multiple complex this one, but here I'll take the simplest one. Uh, we, I will just keep it simple and say there are primarily two aspects of any change. One is the technical aspect to finalize the target operating model or TOM, which we were talking about in the technical aspect. What exactly is the change program? And the second was the people side of change to take organization to the target operation, where actually you have the real cultural holistic angle of the change management. Now, if you were to further break them up, our technical aspect would comprise of the financial, the process, the marketing, the analytics, all the technical things, which is also necessary because you would actually be wanting to show some quantitative and some tangible benefits. But the other aspect is motivation, knowledge, systems, and processes. Now, without the focus on both aspects, we have to focus on both aspects. But without the people aspect, the Tom does not kick off. You will not be able to do that. And even if it does, it will go back to maybe probably worse than it was earlier. Right? Let's say I'm not fine that the people do not have the necessary knowledge or the training to do that change. I've implemented a change. What will happen is after some time, the change will be very short lived. It may be only lasting a month or so. But then because of there is no adequate knowledge of the concerned person, there are not trainings, we have not done enough trainings, or we have not done enough knowledge skill bearing sessions, you will find that the entire aspect, the entire change and whatever we have done technically go back even to worse than it was before, which is very difficult then to incorporate. So basically, when you start working on it, start with the people aspect first, and I would rather recommend work on them simultaneously, because then you will be able to demonstrate quick wins also. Uh, there are. This is just a slide for your reference. So there are many change models. So I've taken the four primary ones. Cotter's A step I talked about. Then there is something called Levin's. He was another gentleman, Kurt Levin, who actually developed a change model involving three steps, which is basically first unfreezing, then changing, then refreezing. That he decided for him. What Levin said was that the process of change entails creating the perception that a change is actually needed. Then you move towards the new desired level of behavior, and finally, you need to put that behavior as a norm and as a practice. Then there is the ADKAR model. Now, ADKAR is a short form for there's a company called PROS, PORSCI. I'll probably, if you want, I can give you the details. ADKAR model is actually another model, which is a goal-oriented change model. It was created by the founder called Jeff Yatt, HIATT. It basically is an acronym and represents five tangible and concrete items that people need to achieve. Now, ADKAR stands for A is for awareness, D is for desire, K is for knowledge, A for ability, and R for reinforcement. So independently, each one of them is a module and a methodology in itself. Okay. Then there is GE famous program. There's a General Electric change acceleration process, which they had developed initially when they were doing a lot of Six Sigma and organizational change management. It basically actually has 4 or 5 very good methods, and where you can actually, it also starts with a champions program for change, where you invite all the top management and explain to them what we are going to be doing, so that you have that kind of the alignment, and then it actually goes down and identifies changes, what you need to do, what are important. So you actually end up making a capogram. So like I said, these are independent separate models themselves, but they all converge on the same things of the two aspects of change, which we talked about in the previous slide. If I'm going too fast, you let me know, please. Now this is our famous change curve. This is applicable to any organization. So there was a question, right? So when somebody had asked me, yeah, Uday had asked me, how to deal with anxiety of change, which is based on fear for any change. Now, first, what we need to do first is that first we need to. This is how actually a person behaves. Uh, with the passage of time, if I were to plot the morale and the competence level of a person, of any of individuals or a group of individuals, right? Now, what is going to happen is that this is how the curve would look like typically. The slopes may vary a little, but this is the general curve, and it's based on actual data actually. Initially, what would happen? It will come as a shock or surprise at the event. That this is not actually, because that people were not expecting that this is going to happen. Stage one, this can't be happening. That's what it says. Then our comes that we are in denial. We are looking for evidence that it's not true. So we are trying to, what we are trying to do is, people will say, okay, no, I don't accept it. I'm not going to believe it, and I will start looking at aspects. Okay, why should I change? I mean, this cannot be true. I will start looking for evidence actually that it cannot happen. So I will start collecting data on my own, which in fact may not exist, and may end up manipulating data, which is the worst form. Then comes the frustration angle, which is recognition that the things are going to be different, and then you get angry. And then you further go down in terms of morale, and then you have the depression, the low mood, you're lacking in energy. And then what we do, okay, then finally I come to terms, and let's say if my change agent, assuming that they are very strong and motivated people and they're resilient people, and it's expected that change, people who drive these kind of changes are going to be like that. So then the people who down the line, they will start a bit of experimentation. Okay, let's look at it. Let's start a little bit of engagement with a new situation. Then there's a decision. Okay, now I need to learn, work in a new environment. And tomorrow, let's say an organization level restructuring is going on, right? While the organization will try to transition you out, but still we will go through these processes. But do you think the change will not happen? The restructuring will have to happen. It will happen definitely. So the earlier and the more or less the slopes of this curve then are, the better it is for the concerned individual. Learning how to work in the new situation, feeling more positive. Now today, if you look at, let me give you a very good example here. Uh, yeah, good morning, Vidraj. So I would say what we actually learned as engineers, and let's say about 20, 25 years ago, is not applicable today in that real context. And I mean, the amount of digitization, amount of IT enablement, and all that. I mean, whether we like it or not, it is a number one precedence right now. And you have to be, if you want to grow, if you want to survive, you have to know all those stuff. So for us, people like us who've been brought into the core manufacturing environment, when they come and see this, it was a big change for us, right? Initially, when we started, there were not enough computers in the organization itself. Forget the department. But now everybody has got one on the desk, and you're expected to do everything to that. Not only that, even your processes are very much automated. You have to do everything as per that. So we have to take a decision that either we upskill, we change ourselves, otherwise we will not be acceptable. We'll be out of the game, right? So that is the biggest mid-level career transition which you can have. right? And I myself went through it. So, okay, going to the past part, that changes have been integrated and the individual is renewed. Now he is accepted and he is incorporated. So basically, what this curve shows is basically is a inertia to individuals' natural inertia, which is natural. So, and then if we divide it in four stages, this can be stage one is this can be happening. How? I mean, why? Then stage two is then why should I have to change? I don't want to change. Stage three. Then when I come to the stage that I want to go into the experimentation stage, I said, okay, so let me look at how this could work for me. Stage four is, oh, I can now see how this has worked for me. So if you do not follow this process, it's expected that there will be these crests and troughs. Is going to be a real problem. So answering your question, Uday, understanding and recognize the resistance and inertia for change is imperative for building effective facilitation skills. If you do not recognize there is a resistance to change, you will not be able to address it. If whatever meetings you go, whatever facilitation you want to do, is going to be on shaky ground, like I said earlier. It do not have a good foundation. So what you need to do is first recognize that there is a resistance. And let me tell you, resistance to change again is a very detailed topic, but I'll give you an example here so that you can go with this and you can start looking at it in that way. Then identify the nature. For example, a person in a meeting, when you're sitting now, your top management is, let's say, convinced, assuming that you have to implement this technological change and you have to IT enable it. A person sits in a meeting and he doesn't say anything. He's just sitting and watching. He's not doing anything. He's just watching. He will not respond. He will not do. Now that's a resistance to change. Another resistance to change is somebody is asking too much of confirmation. Oh, so can we do like this? So can we do like this? So can we do like this? Please beware. This is also a resistance to change. Okay, both are signs of resistance to change. They will keep asking you confirmation, and tomorrow what will happen is they will, if there is some problem, yeah, because every change program will have its ups and downs also. If there is some problem in the change process, what will happen is they will say, look, I asked him how to do it, and this is what it will, and we're following him. If it is not working, then what can I do? So this is the biggest problem which you can have. This change doesn't, it looks like the person is responding, but actually there's the biggest resistance to change, right? The other parts you can still identify, but to identify, okay, that person is actually asking for too much of confirmation for everything your step. He's saying, okay, can I do like this? So that is also a resistance to change. Please be aware. There are other categories also, but we'll deal that in a later, maybe another module. But for now, right now, what I would suggest is have a look and identify the change, whether there is a resistance to change. Now, with this background, right, uh, let me go and let's do a little bit of pre-work. Right to there. So this resistance is there's a resistance based on the nature of individual, so we need to deal accordingly. And what I gave you an example is basically one of the examples. Maybe not saying anything in a meeting, and somebody who's saying asking too much confirmation. Let me give you one more. So good morning, Astas. Welcome to the program. So there, what coming back to you there, what we were saying is that we have to deal accordingly. Another example which I'll give you is, okay, so you are saying like that, so I'll do it. If you say so, then I'll do it. That's also resistance to change, right? We may say, okay, this is what it is, so, but okay, you are telling me this, I will go by this. So you're telling me this, so आप कह रहे हो तो मैं ऐसे करूँगा. You're saying, so I'm going to do like this. Anyway, so before we actually now start with the actual facilitation, another thing which we need to look at is we need to do something called stakeholder mapping and analysis, which is actually, I would say, another part of pre-work before facilitation. So once you've identified there's a resistance and all that, you look at, then we need to do some pre-work before any facilitation. So what is the pre-work? We need to systematically identify who are the stakeholders. And when I'm saying stakeholder, what is the stakeholder? He's any individual. It can be a group, an organization, or individual that can affect, influence, or probably create a roadblock also, and affected by perceived itself to be affected by any change program and initiative, right? People who have a stake in it. It can be an internal stakeholder and external stakeholder also. Okay. So This is somebody. I'll give you an example. I'll give you some examples of stakeholders, internal in the next slide. Let me first put a little more context to it. Right, Sudhir. Yeah, repeated communication, FAQ of the process is very vital so that we keep driving the change. Exactly. Yeah, so Rakesh, this I'll take maybe later on. You please keep your question parked. Communicating the why for change and what's in it for me continuously. Yes, it is necessary, but let me go through the entire process, and then we'll have a small discussion around it. So, what is stakeholder management? It involves number one, it take into consideration different interests and concerns of stakeholder and addressing them. And second part is that we we have to ensure that are aligned and support the change program. Now, what are those individuals? We are saying that they are going to be affected by the change program directly or indirectly. Now, why it is very necessary to identify all the stakeholders is because they can directly, indirectly influence it. Let me give an example. You are, well, let's say you're in a manufacturing setup, right? Where your employees are your internal stakeholders, but your nearby township, villages, and society. Society can be in a city also, and in a major small town also. You may have come across is an external stakeholder. While you are trying to, you have a salary for the employees, and there is a process for the internal employees. There has to be a very detailed engagement program with the external stakeholder, which is the society, and which is probably the nearby villages. Why it is necessary? Because this will otherwise can in fact impact your industrial relations, and any organization, any manufacturing organization cannot coexist with that if you do not have a proper CSR model for this, which is the community support program, right? It is necessary to do that. While you're going to take care of employees, you need to be there. You need to have a very strong method. Let me give you another example of the CSR. Sometime back, maybe I think right now also, currently also, Microsoft started with a lot of investment into African continent. Why is that? Because they were planning to do business in that. Because they knew that without the local support, they will not be able to move forward. So they said, okay, let me spend a little amount of money, build that support first before I actually start doing business in them. Because they realized that the market potential is huge there. So they did that. Similarly, a lot of organizations do this exercise, but there are very few people who are very few organizations who are actually able to establish a very clear relationship. Let me tell you, this is a direct bearing on your business results. It can straight away impact a, 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 a driving or a positive society can drive your growth. Tomorrow you want to expand and do anything, they will be the first one to come forward, and they'll help you remove all the obstacles otherwise. And if you do not work with them, if you're not properly engaged them, they will be the first ones to oppose you. So any plan or expansions you have, that will go for a toss, right? So that is why it's very important to identify all the stakeholders. Other stakeholders can be the the local politicians, your customers, your investors. They are external. They are also your employees, their families. If they are in the same township, they are also a stakeholder. The society is another stakeholder. So you have to identify all the programs, especially for your program, who are your direct and indirect stakeholders. Right. So steps in stakeholder management, right? So what do we do here is, if I want to do, I would first identify, I told you how to identify, then we do need to do an analysis of the stakeholder. Then we need to prepare a matrix and categorize them. Which stakeholders in which matrix. Now I'll discuss about both this analysis and matrix in the subsequent slides. And then we need to engage them, right? What is the plan for engagement for the stakeholders, right? We should also attempt to create a RACI. RACI, you know, right? R is for responsibility, one A for accountability, C is for consulting, and I for informed. Basically, for each and every stakeholder you identify and various steps in the change program, if you identify and prepare a matrix which tells how the stakeholder is going, which stakeholder is going to be performing what, and is going to be role is going to be what, whether it needs to be only consulted or there has to be some sort of accountability. If you do this exercise prior to your change program, and you need to keep on revising and reviewing it, then it will go a long way in addressing any of the problems which you may have later on in your program. Okay. The next is I've given you one very basic template, giving you a very basic template for for a stakeholder management, right? Now, what it just says is basically what is the stakeholder? What is the designation? Now, this is very important because you will then get to know what is his influence level in the organization, which division or department he belongs to, what is his current interest level, meaning whether he is opposing it or is he supporting it. You can give him maybe scale of 1 to this one, or you can just do a tick mark. Influence level, whether he's a low influence on your program or high. See, accordingly, while you should take care of all the stakeholders, but who are immediately affected. Now, if you're doing a manufacturing program, then your head of the functional head of the technical has to be number one stakeholder, right? And he has to, and then your marketing has to be a good stakeholders because they are the ones who are going to be interfacing with the customer. So those are going to be your influence level. So there will be high this one. At a different level, your procurement probably can be or let's say an HR can be a low influence level, or it can be high influence level if you want to have some, if you want to do some hiring also. What are the key concerns and issues with each of these stakeholders, and what is your going to be your engagement plan, right? Now, this is a very simple template, but if you do this exercise right and you use this template right, it'll help you in not only identifying the stakeholders but also actually giving them a basic understanding of where do you stand in terms of your if I were to launch this program, if I were to start this joint program, what are the, you'll give you perspective of where I can stand with various people. And let me tell you, it can have a lot of impact. We were trying to drive a change program, and the CEO was convinced. In fact, he was the one who brought us in. But what was happening was the first level, the functional level, right? The number tools, they were not taken into consideration. And what happened was they started opposing it, the program. So we had to do a separate exercise altogether to engage them again. Had this exercise been done prior to even basically at the time when we were engaged with along with the stakeholders, then this problem would not have arisen. So what we have to do is we have to go back to it, which was actually a sort of non-value adding activity. Yeah, hello, TV. Gathering information regarding stakeholders' current interest, influence level should be run through a one-to-one or group meetings, right? So if you think that he's a senior level guy, probably you need to go to him one-to-one, ask for his time, ask for an appointment, and talk to him and say this is what you're planning to do. Do not try to do this without his without the talking to him person or taking him into confidence. He may agree with you, he may not agree with you, but if it's a top-down driven initiative at an organizational level, he will follow. But then what he will respect you for is that you have come to him and seeking guidance for it. Engagement plan for each stakeholder should be populated, identifying stakeholder position in the stakeholder meeting. So once you've identified what position, when I'm saying position is basically till the influence level, right? And when you know what are the concerns and issues. Then when you engagement plan can also come after when you have done one level of interaction with them. You can always revise it also, especially when it comes to a senior guy, right? Okay. And by the way, even your own team, which you're going to be engaging, you also need to engage them, and you also need to identify. But that will come a little later because your own team probably will be you have already discussed with them before you're going forward for it. But then this is very necessary, right? Because these people are the opinion makers for the organization. So once I've identified, what I do is I categorize them. Basically, on the x-axis, I have interest, and the y-axis have power influence. So basically, we just categorize them. Whether they are least important, we need to show some consideration. We need to meet their needs. If their interest may be low, but if they are highly placed or influential, we need to meet their needs. And there are cases where you have the high interest and high influence. So they are the key players. So very first thing which you need to identify are the key players. And I think the change program will start only after discussing with the key players, right? Please make that happen. Then you should go to meet their needs. people who are again on the next level, which is the meeting their needs. Then you can go to show the concentration people who have high interest, but maybe their influence is low, because these people actually can be a good guiding coalition. People who are in the show concentration kind of one. And there are people who are least important, they may have low interest or low. So you can, while you may still have a plan for them, but you need not focus them on a priority, right? So this is how you key players, then meet their needs, show consideration, and then least important. Least important doesn't mean that least important not from a point of view of maybe designation or whatever it is. That is no way to belittle them, but from a point of view of your change program, right? Please keep that into perspective. Don't take the holistic view. You see what program you are going to be doing, and for your program, who is the most interested party and who has an influence on it as a stakeholder. That has to be kept in perspective. It is not at an organization level, it is with respect to your own change program. I hope that is clear, right? Very, very important. So this is like a basic engagement plan. You can take this as a holistic this one. So what we need to do is here, okay. So what I'm showing to you is can you hear me now, Asta? Is my voice clear? Okay, let me check my 1 second. I think I'm yeah. Okay, great. So what I'm showing to you right now is the stakeholder matrix engagement plan. What we are doing here is we've identified, right, and we have categorized the stakeholders. So I gave you a template also, which is a normal Excel template which you can make. If you want, probably I can create one. If you later on, I can send it to you. So what we do for key players, we focus our focus efforts on this group. We need to involve them in governance and decision making, right, and engage and consult regularly. This is the high level plan for that. It will get fine tuned and customized depending upon the program as it moves along, and you will have to keep doing it. Otherwise, right, if you, they make get involved in meetings, they may not get involved in meetings. You invite them for every meeting, but okay, and you ask them would you like to be a part of it, can I send you in, you send it to them anyway, they because they expect that, right? Another part, we said, they meet their needs, right? You engage and consult on an interest level. You try to increase the level and aim to move into right hand box. So you try to, they may not be interested, right? But what happens is that since they are influential, they can create obstacles for you. So you need to make sure that they try to put them and transition them into a key player. So that what happens is that they will also feel not only important, but they will also feel they will get the sense of urgency and a sense of accountability here. So basically, from a consulting level and informed level in a RASI matrix, you're moving to the responsibility and accountability level. Then comes your consideration, like I said, right? They make use of interest to involvement in low risk areas like keep informed and consult interest, potential supporter and goodwill ambassador. Remember, see, I'll reiterate the change model for quarter, right? The 7, 8 steps which we were talking about. These are the guys who can actually help you in creating that coalition. We were talking about it, right? I'll reiterate it maybe towards the end of the program. And these people can actually help you drive the change program. So you can involve them in the smaller aspects of the change, right? So where you can actually help them in getting quick, small but quick wins, right? And they can help you and they can support you in meetings. So you can invite them. Least important is basically you can inform by communications, newsletter. And our aim is to move them into the box of high. Maybe from an influence level, no, but from an interest level at least, right? You cannot increase their influence, right? But you can definitely increase their interest, right? In the top box also, if you see, we are trying to increase their interest because influence, moving the level of influence is not in our control, but we can definitely control the interest by doing all this activities. I hope so. Like stake change management, you also need to do stakeholder mapping and engagement prior to initiating any program, which is also important in increasing effectiveness of facilitation, right? So these are two activities which you really need to do before you actually embark upon any change program. Sorry, I think the slide didn't change. And this is the slide actually for your reference. If you want, you can keep this also, which I'm talking about. For consideration, you make use of interest through involvement in linked areas, key players. Our intent is to take the people who are meet their needs quadrant into key players by increasing the interest. Least important to show the concentration, right? That is our going to be our intent. From left to right, from left to right. We can influence interest, we can control, and we can increase interest through all these activities, but we cannot change influence, right? It is not in our control. Please remember that. Okay, the next slide is now let's go to who is the facilitator. First, let's define a facilitator. He is an individual who enables progress through group dynamics towards achievement of predetermined objective. I'll tell you why what is a predetermined. She acts as a constant support to take people and processes to the end point and beyond. He's a multi-skilled people's person focusing more on how and why rather than what, which is predefined. Now, do you understand what I'm talking about? What is predefined is basically when a facilitator enters into any group dynamics or any discussion or any meeting, whatever we have to improve as a result of our technical aspects. We talked about the target operating model, right, of change. He has to. There are some KPIs. There will be some KPIs and clear objectives to it. He needs to enter that with that into a. It is very clear. You cannot be generic. You have to, that facilitator has to enter into that particular this one into any meeting with that particular context in mind, and he explains to the concerned team, initiating discussions and setting the expectation. So when you are going to be discussing with the change, your own change is going to be the, here we are talking about an implementation team. Now we are done change management, we identified stakeholders, but when it comes to actual implementation and we're going to a meeting, this is very well, it's all been done, and this is what we are going to achieve, right? That's why it is important that people who are going to be associated, who are the stakeholders for that particular process, are aligned to it and they're clear why they are entering into it. It has to be very clear. So it's already the what is defined. What we have to decide in the meeting is how and why. Okay. Here, what the facilitator, there's a difference, right? And it is different from other aspects of coordination knowledge, which we'll discuss later. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. So what does the facilitator do? He's a mentor, coaches, handholds individuals while being process oriented and objective. One part. Another role is he can activate individuals' dormant skills within a group to bring out the best. That is also one of the roles he has to play. She is someone with the thorough knowledge of group process to formulate and deliver clear actions through a group. He has the ability to create, she has an ability to create formal enabling facilitating structure, which is imperative to achieving goals through a group. Now, what this means is, what is basically it means is you are a mentor, coach. You're also responsible for maybe identifying whether an individual probably has a lot of potential, but it is not coming out. So you have to create that kind of environment for him. You should also be aware. You cannot enter into that particular change process without not being aware what it's all about. So you need to know what are the policies which are going to be governing, because you have to one who have to actually drive the actions through your team. He has the ability to create formal enabling facilitating. Why a facilitating structure is very important, and basically it is there to assign accountabilities. And we talked about the RACI matrix, right? Otherwise, what will happen is the meeting will go off very well, but when after the meeting, everyone will go off and they'll switch off. And then the facilitator will be left hanging with the KPIs and no one to follow through. It is very important. Once you enter the facilitation, especially if it is the first time, immediately after it or during the process, please create a formal structure. It can be a temporary facilitating structure which will drive the change which you are going to propagate or implement, right? Specific to your change. So if it is a project, it can be a temporary team which may be there for 6 months, 8 months, 12 months. If it is going to be a complete improvement program, it can be there for 3 to 4 years. So the time it actually gets absorbed in the DNA of the company. Is very important, right? The in absorption into the DNA and where you can have sustainable results, it is very important. It is only then the team, the structure can be dismantled, otherwise keep it on. And let me tell you, there is no harm. People will say, why are you creating this structure? There are so many structures. There is no problem. These structures works. These kind of structures work very well because they are team-based structures. They work very well in parallel with existing hierarchy of the organization. All right, existing hierarchy also of the organization work very well. So you have to create. Please do not hesitate in creating that. Immediately enter into it so that everybody is connected and there are for that your change program everybody has clear actionables. Let's go to the next slide. It talks about evolution of change. So what is facilitation is basically it is evolution from directing, coordination, training. So what is directing? Directing is it is more of giving instructions. So what the top boss does, right? I'm giving instruction, orders, procedures, driven, task oriented. Now let me tell you, this all is a little contextual also, right? When it comes to maybe the armed forces, this is the chain of command. It's very, very important. So this will take a precedence. So facilitation may not, I mean, may happen in that particular context. So what is important? You need to get the context, which industry you are in, which kind of line of work you are in. Then next part is the coordination. But since you have to get the job done while dealing with groups which are dissimilar, we need a common language for communication. Therefore, we need to have good coordinations where we need great linkages which are more task centric and less people centric. Third aspect is the training. What processes need to be driven as per organization's design? People need to be taught skills through rigor. So, what is facilitation? It is a combination of all three. You will also be directing because otherwise, what will happen is that people will not respect you as a leader. At the same time, you also have to coordinate because there will be a multifunctional, cross functional team which will normally come into play when you are doing it. Because if you need people to drive a change, you will have to get in touch with the HR also, though it may be a technical aspect of change. Third aspect is the training team. Training. So you may have to take the help of the training, learning and development team to do that kind of training modules. And you need to say, okay, I need to organize after this change. How am I going to do this? So we need to have some training modules. So you need to be trainer also at the same time, or you need to have aspects. What process need to be done? So you have to combine the strengths of all three. Then only you can become a good. You can have a good. You can become a good facilitator. Because you see, what happens is, let's say we are doing any meeting, a facilitator not only should direct the meeting, but he is also responsible for presenting and getting the coordinating for the findings which are there from as a result of previous tasks. So let's say we are in the meeting number 2 or 3. What happened in meeting number 1 and we drove some actions, you need to present, okay, this is what we did in the previous one, this is the output for it, and now that is the next step forward. If you do not do that kind of a homework through, and you need to get it done either yourself or through your other or people who support you, it will not move forward. The facilitation process will not move forward. Therefore, all three are very important. Now, to do that effectively, you need all these three aspects: directing, coordination, and training. A little bit on more on the facilitation aspect. It is an art. I will rather, so it's basically, I will not, I would say also it's a science also for enabling processes which works both at maintaining and enhancing human meaningfulness at the same time. They're important not only managing a group, but also raising effectiveness. It is the more cohesive a group, the more effective it is. So therefore, facilitation skills helping making the group more cohesive. It is also necessary because we do not work in isolation. We live in a world where there is interdependency and interaction at all times, and each member of the group needs to facilitate the one another one to achieve a common goal. So, in a word, while you may be the main facilitator, there are individual facilitator you need can identify. Okay, this guy can good act and support to me as a facilitator also. Why this is all this? Why this background to this all this definition, right? Why we paying such a lot of interest? Because we live in something called VUCA world, right? We use CA, and what it means is actually is V is for volatility, U for uncertainty, C for complexity, and A for ambiguity. We are living in a world which is volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, and we need to all work together in a cross-functional, multi-layered organization, multi-level organization if you want to get anything done. We do not cannot work in silos, right? We have to work together as a cohesive team. And more cohesive we are, more effective our processes, more effective our change program, right? That is why all this background is necessary. Yeah, welcome, Prince. So, if I were to go to the next slide, groups and teams are often brought together. This is more on the significance and the meaning aspect of facilitation. Together to work on challenging projects involving complex business and operational processes. This will be, you will not be able to avoid it. You will be brought together, right? Whether it is a proposal drafting, or whether it is a discussion with the customer, or you're going to set up a new product, we are going to bring out a new product in the marketing, right? We talked about all those kind of changes. Good facilitation and effective. When I'm saying effective is means that you may be a good facilitator, you may be doing a lot of work, but if you're not KPI oriented, if your agenda is not clear on the why, if your what and how is not clear, how you're going to do it, if you have not set the expectations well, if you have not done a proper change planning, if you have not done a proper change alignment, if you have not done a proper stakeholder engagement plan, your facilitation will not be effective. So normally, if it takes maybe 1 or 2 meetings, which you can finish the entire process, and maybe at least from an operational angle, which may take about a week or two, maybe let's say in an agile process, we may do 2 weeks kind of a sprint planning. You will end up doing that in much more higher. You may take at least go to 8. It will not reach to a logical conclusion. It is very important in a corporate world, and it goes a long way in addressing attrition also, because a facilitator is not only helping, but it is also creating a need. See, many times people don't attrite. They do not want to be away from the organization because of purely compensation on this, because they feel that they are not getting enriched enough. This is one way of doing that. It is the unique ability to bring the best out of people, even while they are still in their comfort zones, and also they can also help in transitioning smoothly out of the comfort zone, because see, this smoothly, it is the that is the aspect of change also, right? Facilitation, when you are a good facilitator, you can also help the concerned individual to bring out the best in him. Basically, sort of what we call is you some hidden talent is there, potential. Every person will have strengths, right? Our job as facilitators is to bring out that strength in the concerned individual. Thus, when a person, if you were to look at the, this would be probably the last slide, right? There are two aspects in it, right? One is when a person's homegrown skills, that it provides the individual with a sense of feel good factor, right? If I have a strength, right, somebody says, oh, you are good in this, can you help me out with this, right? So I am giving you a chance to bring out those skills aspect, because oh, this person understood what my strengths are, right? Everybody has it, and they are using them, and I will get interested also, right? I'll be self-driven. And this is also a very small but important step towards self-actualization. So what we are doing is we are combining homegrown skills of the individual. Homegrown, remember, this is very important. One, he has been nurtured over the years, right? Who he has there as a strength, and he has developed them over a period of time. And whatever the organization has given him, and you can combine them very well effectively to drive your change program. Basically, self-actualization comes from Maslow, right? He was a hierarchy of need model. And if you have, probably everybody who has read sociology, is the final stage for is the self-actualization stage, where I'm no more driven by the materialistic desires, but my own work and passion drives me. I'm a self-driven individual. And when I'm doing, you remember the film, right? Three Idiots, right? Whenever you're doing something with passion, correct? So we are basically going to be self-driven, right? We do not need any other separate this one, right? So this was my last slide, and now we can take any questions which you may have. If you want to contact me, this is my email ID, right? I can write it down for you here also. Right. So I would today I'll just summarize it also. So my summary would be: so if you are going into a facilitation environment, first identify the whether there is a change, what change you are going to do, what is the and what are the resistance, and name and categorize the resistance. So identifying the resistance is very important, right? Now a good way to do that is something called one of the models which I found Kotter to be a little more easy to follow and more little more detailed. So I'll just repeat that steps to you. You can probably write them down, and if you want, I can send them to you separately also. You can write them down. So what he had done was he had created a 7-step program. Now each of these steps, I'll just give you what are these steps are. Firstly, create a sense of urgency, right? Then create a guiding coalition. Remember the people who were very interested but may not have a lot of influence? You can always create a guiding coalition through them. Then third, you need to develop a vision and strategy. Fourth, communicate the vision, change vision. So you have to keep communicating the change vision. Let's say tomorrow the organization says that I want to go from 2,000 crores to 3,000 crores. Now that's an organizational level change, right? You are going to do it at an organizational level, but accordingly, my stakeholders, right? I need to do a proper stakeholder mapping. How will it happen on its own? If I do not have a good market base, I need to inform my customers also. I need to inform my concerned dealers, stock, whoever I'm going to do, my external. I have to keep my society also informed. So I need to have a stakeholder program also, and I need to keep communicating it that this is what I want to do, and I need to keep taking inputs from them. This is what I have to do about it. Then I have to communicate change vision. Then I have to prepare a broad action plan. How am I going to do it? Generate short-term wins. I need to break it down. Once I have developed a high level, I need to break it down very small steps, and I need to keep on developing milestones, right? Small goals. Okay, I've achieved this, now I achieved this. The next step is to do this, and I have to set in processes where the achievements and the wins remain and are sustainable. Then after that, I consolidate my gains and start implementing, build a foundation, and go forward and implement more change and anchor change in the culture. So that is where. So once I've done that, I've done my facilitation, I've done stakeholder mapping, then I jump into actual facilitation, which is the crux and the actual implementation of the change program. In summary, change management, stakeholder management and engagement, identification, management and engagement, and third is actually then actual facilitation. Now, how actually you will further drive facilitation is another topic in a module where you're actually dealing with the actual core. Once you've done all that and how to drive it further, there's a separate module on it. But this is how you're laying a foundation for a good change. If you use this, you can start with this particular reference. I take it as a reference. It is, of course, none of it is short, but you can take this slide set as a reference and whatever I've told you, and you can start with and hit the ground running, right? And if you need any help, we are always there to help you out. Yes, right to that. So human change management is critical before technical change management. That is what I said, right? In my aspects of change, right? When we talked about, there are two aspects for change. First, one is the target operating model, which you want to do, right? And second is the people aspect, the motivation, the morale, the training, the skill. Very important to have that all that in place. Otherwise, what will happen is it will never come in the DNA of the organization, and whatever we may be able to achieve through some change, also some improvement, but it will all go back to previous thing, probably even worse state. Any good book you can suggest for change management? Uday, you can maybe send me a maybe test mail, and I'll probably get you a good book. But what I would suggest is look at John Cotter. Maybe look it up in the Google, and you will get a good idea of what change program is there. I'll probably see if I have some book. I'll send it across. You can maybe write. They'll send me a test mail at @hotmail.com. I'll send you the name of the books. Okay. Right now, I cannot recall it directly as of now, but these are some good models. And the Cotter model we found to be a good one. We studied a few models at an organizational level. And you can implement it in anywhere. You want to do an IT change, you want to do a technological change, it's very good. Yes, Leading Change by Cotter, correct. Right. Sorry. Thanks, Rakesh. Leading Change by Cotter is a good book. You can read that. I think there will be PDFs also available now. Okay. Are there any more questions? Thank you, Asta. Any more questions? You can write to me separately also. Thank you, Rakesh. Were you able to hear me clearly? So this is actually your Q&A session if you want to have more understanding on it. So what we do is actually each of these programs. Each of these are modules on themselves, and where we do drive the methodologies to understand more into details and aspects in human nature. But I said, for somebody who's wanting to do something quickly, you can take this as a reference. The 8 steps, you can look at it in the leading for change. If you do not have that, I can send you those 8 steps. Send me a mail address or this one. So, and I'll send you those. Very, very important, right? You need to have a clear methodology, right? Uh, for doing it. See, there's one thing which I like to mention here is, while Kotter is also very detailed methodology, the GE's change acceleration program, which it does, right? It actually goes about in identifying a lot of projects in the final stages of its change program, and it makes something called a capogram, which actually profiles the change, the nature of change, and where your change is in an organization. It gives it a visual representation. So if somebody wants to do and wants to know more on that, probably you can get in touch with me separately. So basically, I used to do these programs as part of delivery management, and also I'm a certified Six Sigma Master Black Belt. Also, I'm into analytics also. So all this is very necessary when you want to do anything, right? Thank you. Any more questions? So, I think there was a polls which were there. Please, yeah. So second, 963. You can come through there also. And thank you there for organizing this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Mm.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much for the wonderful session.
Thank
And
you.
thank you everyone from their career mentors. I request you all to follow us on YouTube and Facebook for more such webinars.